Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today for Session 6 in the second series of the Refocus and Rebuild webinars. This is a series focused on helping Virginia businesses reopen in a COVID-19 world. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I'm with Virginia Community Capital. If you're not familiar with us, we are a community development financial institution in Virginia providing lending, investing, and community innovation services. We are happy to be partnering with the Virginia Small Business Development Center Network, GenEdge, University of Virginia's College at Wise Office of Economic Development, and the Southwest Virginia Alliance for Manufacturing to present this weekly webinar series. This is a 13-week webinar series that's helping business owners and leaders build skills and knowledge to manage and grow, as well as to share resources that can help our businesses in Virginia move forward following the pandemic. If you noticed in your reminder emails that you received from me, we provided a link to access a variety of templates and a guidebook that you could use and refer to over the previous week's sessions and for those that are upcoming, and of course what we'll be presenting today. Now, before I get started and introduce our presenter today, I wanted to note that in order to keep this webinar flowing and to stay within our 1-hour goal, we have muted everyone. However, we want to hear from you. So if you have a question for our presenter today, if you will please post those in the Q&A section, we will address those at the end of the presentation. It is my privilege to introduce our presenter today. This session is going to focus on how to prepare for the next crisis, developing a resiliency plan, and why you need and how you can develop this plan to help you in your next crisis. It'll be presented today by our partner, Sam Wolford. He is the Regional Growth Manager and Trade Adjustment Assistance Program Manager with GenEdge. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Sam over many years in economic and community development, and I can tell you that he has a passion for helping Virginia businesses. And he's perfect for presenting this today. So, Sam, I want to turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Sandy. And I really appreciate the emphasis on many. That's it has been a few years, but many. I would rather not say too many minis, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I think I've shared my screen. You should be able to see the presentation. I'll start the slideshow here very quickly. There we go. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. Also want to thank all the partners as well. This series could not happen without Virginia Community Capital, Small Business Development Centers, Southwest Virginia Alliance for Manufacturing, and UVA's Office of Economic Development. I am going to be talking today about preparing for the next crisis, business continuity, resiliency planning. Anything can happen. We look back in history and some recent history, Hurricane Katrina. Who would have imagined the amount of damage, the amount of impact that happened when Hurricane Katrina hit? I think a lot of people never believed that it would have the type of impact and damage it had. What about 9/11? Who would have thought that terrorists would have taken over aircraft and flown them into the Twin Towers, ultimately bringing them to the ground? And certainly this COVID-19 crisis and our response to it, who would have thought that businesses would have to be shut down for literally months? So, things do happen. So it's always best to be ready, to be prepared. When is your organization most at risk for continuity disruptions? There's a lot of different types of disruptions that can occur. We've already mentioned natural disasters, tornadoes, floods, wildfires, blizzards, hurricanes. I think this year is one of the highest. We've had one of the highest numbers of hurricanes already this year than we've ever seen. And so, they haven't had huge impact, but there's been a huge number of storms. So things are occurring, and they're constantly occurring. What about COVID-19? That's definitely had a major impact, and it's been a disaster for many businesses across the nation and around the world. What about infrastructure problems? Have you ever experienced or had a situation where you've lost power for a day or 2 days or a week? Power is critically important, and just as critically important today is internet access, fiber optics. What happens if you have a fiber optic cable cut? How can you prepare for it? What about man-made situations such as cyber attacks? Denial of service attacks, where your system and your particular business gets shut down and your customers cannot get to you through the internet. Or what if you have some theft of intellectual properties, or theft of some of your customers' data? Those are all things that can dramatically impact your business. I think that many businesses have experienced staff shortages recently, where they weren't able to actually bring people into their business, so they weren't able to function fully as their business was planned. Even accidents, accidents happening at your business, or errors that maybe some of your employees may make. Certainly, not on purpose, but sometimes it does happen on purpose. And those are all things that having a way to deal with these disruptions it really can help you in thinking through, what's next, what are the options. So why should we really consider a business continuity and resiliency plan? If you look at this graphic, this is from FEMA. This is actually updated as of earlier this year. 40% of the businesses that closed during a disaster, a federally declared disaster, a large-scale disaster, don't reopen. There's another 25% that ultimately fail within 1 year. And over 90% of companies that fail, they fail within 2 years of being struck by a disaster. It doesn't mean that's the only reason companies fail, but it can be a major impact on companies, and it can create failure that is it's hard to recover from. According to a recent study, there's 48% of small businesses actually don't have business continuity plans. Even though they are the ones that are at the highest risk, they just don't have them in place. Unexpected crises can happen really at any time, and their impacts can be minimized and mitigated through careful planning. So we really need to be thinking about, what is it that we can do? Business continuity and resiliency planning can help protect you, your business, businesses from a lot of uncertainties. And there's a lot of risk in the world, risk that can be measured, risk that can be analyzed, and you can develop very, very careful plans to deal with those risks. But uncertainties are very hard to get your arms around. Uncertainties, you don't really know when they're coming. You don't know what the magnitude of the impact is. And I think certainly with this COVID-19 and our response to it, we had no clue that businesses would wind up being closed down, and many of them still closed across the nation today. So what is business continuity? According to ISO 22300 2018 standard, it's defined as the capability of an organization to continue to deliver products or services at acceptable predefined levels following a disruption. And really, we talked about what types of disruptions can happen. There's all kinds of them. It could even be potentially, your superstar employee leaving your business and going to your competitor. That can have a dramatic change or impact. What about local or global economies? Potentially, that can have an impact on your business and the business continuity that you have. Other things that can impact legislation. Sometimes legislation goes into place that will, make products obsolete or industries obsolete. New developments, new products actually coming into the market and displacing older products. All of those things can have an impact on your business. There are some misconceptions about business continuity planning. The first one, our people, they'll know what to do in an emergency. And I would say in an emergency, probably they do know what to do, but not necessarily in a disaster, not necessarily in a major crisis. And even your best employees, they're going to deal with those crises in a way that, that they would deal with them. If they're having to shoot from the hip, if they're having to figure it out, that can create inconsistency across your organization and across your people. So, our people will know what to do in an emergency. Most likely, in the end, they would be in a much better position if you actually had a plan in place where it was clearly defined and clearly understood throughout your organization. Misconception number two, we have insurance to cover our losses. And I'm sure there are a lot of insurances out there that do cover a lot of different losses and a lot of different challenges that companies and organizations encounter. But typically, those insurances don't account for loss of customer base. There's a large number of businesses that have gone out of business through this COVID-19 crisis. What about those businesses that were serving them? I'm sure that the insurance didn't cover the impact of losing those customers. And there's a lot of other losses throughout the business that insurance more than likely is not going to cover. Another misconception, we don't have time to develop a business continuity plan. And I'll say that really you don't have time not to. A business continuity plan can do a lot of different things for you. It can help you to have a better view of your business in its context, and it can help you be in a better place to adapt. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that later. Misconception number four, business continuity and disaster recovery planning are the same thing. No, they're not. Business continuity planning really is a proactive plan to avoid or mitigate risk associated with the disruption of your operation. It details steps that could be taken to address situations that could arise during an event beforehand, and gives you an opportunity to make sure that your people, your organization, your company is prepared to the degree that it can be. Disaster recovery, that is a reactionary plan. It's okay, what do we do after an event occurs? Just to get back up and going. It's not really about just being fully prepared for what's happening. It's focused more on safety, restoration of critical personnel after disaster. It is a part of business continuity planning, but it is not the same thing as business continuity planning. Ultimately, business continuity planning gives you a plan B. Businesses face many common challenges. There's potential risk factors that can cause significant setbacks to your business, or it can actually cause utter ruination of your business. It's enough to keep any business owner awake at night. And I know that as we've gone through and we've had business leader meetings, through this COVID-19 crisis, a lot of the business leaders have talked about how they are awake at night, thinking about the challenges, thinking about the problems and the issues that they face. But preparedness is really a key to mitigating the risk, avoiding disaster if you can, certainly mitigating the impacts of the disaster. This COVID-19 being such an uncertainty, there's no way to be fully prepared for it. But if you prepare for something, you have something in place that you can fall back on and that can actually help you through the challenges associated with it. So whether you're addressing your computer security, whether you're addressing and dealing with natural disasters, getting a business continuity plan in place is really a necessity for your business. Some of the benefits of a business continuity planning, it allows you to be prepared, allows you to have the confidence to know that whatever the disaster is that hits, that you and the people within your business or organization are going to be able to deal with it. It allows you to be thinking about things like, okay, how do we deal with the finances? How do we deal with cash flow? How do we deal with our employees and make things work for them? It allows your company, your business, your organization to become flexible and adaptable. And that's useful not only in dealing with disasters, not only in dealing with the challenges associated with events that may occur. It's also very valuable in dealing with changes that occur with time, with innovation, things that may be happening in your business or in your industry that's actually changing your business and industry and challenging you to keep a hold on the customers that you have. It can help prevent panic among your staff, among your employees. It can help them to have a level of comfort, to know that you are watching out for them, you have their back, which in turn creates a loyalty for you. So you're looking out for their best interests. You're looking out to try to help your employees. So they're going to look out for you. And as you go through this disaster, you'll have certainly a better response from your employees in helping you to deal with it. And ultimately, it's going to minimize losses. It's going to help you to deal with some of the challenges associated with financial loss. And I know there's been just incredible financial loss across the business community through this COVID-19 crisis that we've gone through. In my conversations with many of the businesses I work with, they have survived because, they had, cash on hand. They had cash reserves that they could tap into. Well, those cash reserves, they're beginning to dwindle now. But if they didn't have cash reserves, where would they be? Not only would they have lost the business that they lost, but more than likely they would have wound up in debt as well to keep the business alive or have their doors closed. So how can you mitigate risk and better prepare for business continuity? There's some things that you really need to have in place in order to do that. Before you do a business continuity plan, they'll become parts of that. First of all, you need to make sure that you have a complete inventory of all of your assets, not just the supplies that you have, not just the inventory you may have that's intended to go to customers, but also your labor force assets. All of your people. Have a complete inventory of all your people, all their skills, understanding what types of roles they could fill if you have to shift them to a new role, understanding their talents, their abilities, and how to utilize them best as you go through whatever the event may be. You will want to analyze threats, and there's lots of different threats. We've already talked about some, but those threats will be unique. So it's hard to plan for all of them, but if you analyze them, there may be plans that you can put in place that will help you to deal with them in a way that is consistent across your organization. So you may have a flood disaster or a power outage crisis, and you may be able to deal with them in the same way through your business continuity planning. You need to plan for the worst. Things do happen. Bad things happen. And if you've planned for the worst that you can think of, certainly you're going to be in a much better position than you would be if you didn't plan for the worst. You need to ensure that your communications plan is in place and is up to date. Make sure both your internal communication, you to your employees, through your supervisors, through your leadership teams, that communication has to be in place. I know many businesses that I've worked with have talked about how they've had to communicate with their employees to let them know, okay, we're going back to work now, to get a response from them. You also want to make sure that your communication with your customers, with your supply chain is also in place, and that you're actually utilizing that communication system throughout the disaster. Now, what about your technology? Virtually every company that I've dealt with over the years has had some form of technology, whether it is phones that are IP based, whether it's computer systems, inventory control systems, whether it's e-commerce, those types of things. All of those have things. Excuse me for any background noise. I apologize. I'm actually in the business center at the hotel that I'm staying in right now, so I apologize for any interruptions that may occur. But anyway, disaster recovery through your technology is very, very critical. And being able to keep your technologies up is important. So, that's an area that you need to be thinking about. And you may want to have a very specific IT plan for your business continuity overall. Overall, it's really about business recovery. How do we recover our business whenever we're going through the challenges of an event such as the COVID-19 and the response to it? Ultimately, it ensures that your critical business processes they can be restored as quickly as possible. You can get back up and working. They may include things like temporary workarounds. You may need to rely on temp agencies or outsourcing if it is like a personnel shortage, or it may be that you'll have to have a fallback system for your telephone. Have at least one landline on site in order to have a way to keep your communication moving. So staffing and planning a recovery team. Every opportunity that we have related to business continuity planning, it really does require a group of people from your business, a group of people from your organization. And this is risk management. So you need to make sure that you have executive sponsorship. You need to make sure that you have the right people in the right places. You need to have emergency controllers, people within your organization that have the ability to control how your company, how your business, how your organization acts and reacts when it implements the business continuity plan. You need to have crisis managers, people within and throughout your business to deal with specific crises that occur, as a result of a disaster, as a result of an event. You need to deal with media relations. Media relations is a critical aspect of dealing with disasters and dealing with and maintaining that business continuity that you want to maintain. And you need to make sure you have someone who is focused on your customer and your supplier relations. Those are critical aspects of your business. Keeping that communication open throughout the disaster throughout the situation and as you move into recovery and through your recovery, that can be absolutely critical to you being able to maintain your business operations as you need to. There's lots of different incident levels that can occur, right? If it's a weather-related incident, if it's a snowstorm, that may come and go within a couple of days. You may know it's going to come and go in a couple of days. So you'll have a way to respond to something like that. Weather-related issues, Hurricane Sandy. And I'll give you an example. In New York City, in New York, I guess, as a whole, there's a lot of database centers. And those database centers, they were looking at business continuity. They were thinking about, okay, what happens if the power goes off? We have to have backup power. So they got generators. Unfortunately, as often happens, they didn't really think through the processes. And they put the generators in the basement instead of on the roof. But when Hurricane Sandy came through, those generators were underwater. So they did absolutely no good. So we saw gaps in service through Microsoft, through Amazon, through some of the major companies that were there. So they looked at it. They said, okay, this is a risk. Power outages is a risk. But they didn't look at the risk of a hurricane or a flood actually impacting their building in the basement. And they put the generators in the basement rather than on the roofs. What about crimes? You're going to have a different level of response when dealing with the loss of a trade secret, the loss of intellectual properties, versus an active shooter crime that may occur within a facility. It's amazing. I was reading this morning on the FBI site that 248 events occurred in 2019 at different facilities, different locations, different businesses across the U.S. That's an incredible number of occurrences. Actually, I think that was 248 actual either injuries and or deaths. I think the number of events was around 28, and that was related to active shooter type events. So that's an incredible number. Even 28 is an incredible number. What about utility malfunctions? Different types of threats, water damage, fire, loss of access to facility. Lots of different things cause you or require a different level of response. And certainly the things that we're dealing with going through this pandemic, they create a situation where it needs a different level of response. Nobody would have dreamed that businesses would still be closed, having closed in March, in September. So, how does a business recover from that? And it is a very, very challenging situation for many. So, one of the things you need to think about are key contacts. Do you have your key contacts on your phone right now? If a disaster was to hit, could you pick up your phone? I'm sure you could call first responders. That's easy, 911, right? You can get fire, you can get rescue, you can get law enforcement. What about the power company? You don't get them through 911, do you? What would happen if you had a transformer to blow up at your facility? Do you have the power company's information right there on your phone? What about key advisors, people that you rely on to give you good advice about your business? There's certainly a lot of opportunities to have advisors for different functions within your business. Do you have them on speed dial? Do you have them where you can get to them right off of your cell phone? Do you have your bank information, your accountant's information, your lawyer's information, your insurance information readily available, right at hand? And if you don't have it readily available, do you have it in a location besides just your business location? Because what happens if you have a disaster or something happen in your specific location and you can't get to your facility? What are you going to do to get a hold of the banks and the accountants and the lawyers and the insurance company if you don't have that information with you? So that needs to be a part of your business continuity plan, making sure you have those contacts right there with you. What about your suppliers? If you're a manufacturer or even a restaurant, do you have suppliers that you can get a hold of easily, quickly? Employees and next of kin information. We hate to think about it, but things do happen, and people do wind up dying from disasters and events that take place. Do you have that next of kin information that you need available to you that you can respond in a way that's going to get the information to your employees next of kin before they see it on the news? Those are important things to be thinking about and to be considering as you go through and you develop your business continuity plan. So, what other contacts do you need? That's part of this process. You need to sit down, you need to think through who are the important internal contacts, who are the important external contacts, and you need to make sure you have those lists and have them available at places that are outside of your facility that you could actually get to if you couldn't get to your facility. So are you going to set up a command center? Some businesses do. Some businesses consider putting in phone systems that will allow them to utilize spaces where they can bring all of their key leadership or key emergency response groups into one place, and they can manage it from that one place. Do you provide the authority to communicate to your people, or is that all on you? If you have someone in place that you can delegate that to, that's going to free you up to deal with other issues. And believe me, when you're dealing with a disaster, there's a lot of other issues that happen that you are going to need to be able to deal with. What about communicating externally? Do you have that person in place that's connected to your customers, to your supply chain? What about to your employees? Do you have somebody that's designated that has the authority to communicate what you need to get communicated? What about the authority to spend money? A lot of times we look at situations and we think, well, we can move on. But what if you're handling a piece of the disaster within your facility and you're not able to be available immediately when something needs to be bought? Do you allow that delegation to the delegation of the authority to expend funds to your key people in a disaster situation? A contingency box, the football. Do you have a contingency box that you have either in a separate location or that you can grab and get to a second location quickly, so that you can get up and running as quickly as possible? Because the quicker you're able to respond, get your business back up, get your business back operational, the more likely you are going to be able to survive a specific disaster or a specific event that occurs. And are you documenting? When things happen, are you documenting the events as they occur during the event? That will give you an opportunity to be able to do an analysis after it's over to see, okay, what could we have changed? What could we have made better? How could we be in a better position next time? And I say next time because there will be a next time. There always is. Disasters, emergencies, crises, there's never just one. There's always more than one that you have to deal with in your lifetime. So, are you documenting the events, and are you learning from those events and applying what you learn to your opportunities? So, are you developing checklists? That's another thing you can do as a part of your business continuity plan. Develop a checklist of what threats that you have, what those responses need to be for those threats. And, for each of those threats, do you have a checklist of, okay, what are the things that I need to make sure I get in place? Who do I need to involve in the response to this disaster? Who are my critical staff that I need to make sure understand the direction and the vision that I want to take the business as we navigate this issue or challenge? What about having a checklist for the fires, for the floods, for the weather emergencies? Checklist for your contacts, checklist for your procedures. Do you have checklists as a part of your business continuity plan? If you don't, you probably need to. You need to be able to track your activities during the actual event. Checklists can help you to do that. And a lot of times they're utilized in and across and throughout command centers responding to disasters and emergencies around the world. So one of the most important things that you can do and that you can think about as you go through and as you're dealing with a crisis or with a disaster is, how can we make sure we have a certain level of redundancy so that our business can recover quickly? Do we understand and know all of the talents of all of our staff? Could we shift people from place to place to get back up to producing or to doing something we need to do in order to address the disaster at hand? And is that going to require shifting that staff around? A redundancy in positions will set your business, put your business in a place where you'll be able to react to challenges, whether they're through a disaster or whether they're not. I know most everyone has key staff members. If you have someone who's the only one in your business that knows how to do something, you really need to be thinking about having someone else mentored by that individual, or having someone else job shadow that individual so that they can learn. Because what happens if something happens to that individual? Many businesses have been impacted that way just by individuals being exposed to the COVID-19 virus, having to stay home for the quarantine periods. You can shut down an entire production line if you don't have a staff member that knows how to do what they need to do. What about your facilities? Do you have redundancy within your facilities where you can shift functions from one place to another if one place of the facility gets damaged or destroyed? Do you have a list of potential partner organizations or businesses that you could connect with that could help you get through a disaster should you have a specific issue or challenge that occurs within your facility? Your documents, your files, we've already talked about these. Access to funding, access to that cash that you need to get through it. Your customers, your suppliers. What about your manufacturing equipment if you're a manufacturer? Do you have access to the individuals that could potentially fix that, either in-house, or are you going to need to get a OEM representative in to work on that equipment? There is opportunities to create that connection, that information that you may need in list, and making sure you have redundancy. Do you only have one individual that you can contact that can work on that equipment, or do you have multiples? What about your computers, your phones, your utilities? I already mentioned if you have an IP-based phone and you lose internet connectivity, you lose your phones. Do you have a backup communication system? Do you have a generator on site? Do you need one? Maybe you don't. Maybe you can live without a generator because you have multiple power resources there. What about computers? Do you have single points of failure within your computer systems that you need to make sure you get addressed? And what about your account numbers, contact information, passwords, building keys, lockbox keys, locations? Those are all things that you need to have copies of, and you need to know where those copies are. So, do you have someone who will handle media management? The media management is a challenge for many businesses, and do you really want certain individuals within your business talking to the media about what's happening during a disaster at your business? And I think the answer to that, most businesses have at least one person in their business. They'd say, no way, I don't want them talking to anybody in the media. Reputation is an important thing. It takes many years to develop it, and it can be gone in just a moment. So dealing with and managing your media contact during an event, following an event, and keeping them updated That's a critical aspect of business continuity and reputation management. You need to think about, okay, who do you want to do that? Make sure you have someone listed in your business continuity plan to do that. So what about if you're a manufacturing or production facility recovering things like buildings and equipment, your suppliers, transportation vendors? I had an example related specifically to logistics. I had a business tell me that they were having a hard time getting the steel they needed for their fabrication work. And the problem wasn't that the steel wasn't available at the vendor. The problem was that the vendor was no longer running their trucks. They had stopped running their trucks. So they had to find an alternative to get that transportation that was necessary and get it to their facility. Have you thought through, have you looked at transportation as a key factor in your business and making sure that you have the supplies that you need to do the work that you need to do? Do you know who your maintenance suppliers are, your electrical maintenance, your plumbers, your lawn suppliers, your roofing, your parts, all of the things that you need? Those all need to be a part of your business continuity plan. I mentioned recovering your reputation. I think that you all probably recognize these folks and how quickly their reputations went away. And, I think that it has taken a long time, and I don't think they'll ever get that reputation back. You could be in that situation. You need to think about that. That needs to be a part of your thought process as you're going through and developing your business continuity plan. The last step is you really need to test it. Any business continuity plan can have many points of failure. So if you're not testing it, then you really don't know whether it's actually going to work or whether it's not. You need to go through and do table tests, talk through it, evaluate it. You need to do dry runs with your staff. Talk to them about, okay, what are some of the opportunities? What can we find that are gaps? How do we make sure we fill those gaps? And then take the time. I know it's hard to take the time. It's hard to take, hours out of your day, but take the time to go through an entire crisis management process live, where it's as if it's actually happening. The more you practice, the better off you're going to be. The more you're preparing for and developing a plan to address the challenges, the better off you're going to be when those disasters occur. So let's talk a little bit about business resilience. Business resilience is really built upon the principles and the foundation of business continuity. Business resilience, really extends much further, and it helps to enhance an organization's, I'll say, immune system to be able to tackle the challenges that come with disasters. It can help you be in a place where you can fend off some of the impacts, some of the risks, some of the symptoms of those challenges, and it'll certainly position you to be able to minimize and mitigate the impacts of those challenges that you do face, and you'll be able to bounce back much more quickly. And in business resilience, there's really no single approach to or no single way of doing things. It's a puzzle. You go through, you develop your business continuity plan, and then you think beyond that. How do I ensure that my business is growing? One thing that a lot of businesses don't take into consideration, and that is, what's going to happen tomorrow? Where do my products fall in the life cycle? What happens when an innovation comes along that can knock my product or what I provide completely out of the market? How am I going to be better positioned to do that? Well, business resilience helps you to be better positioned to do that because you're building on a foundation that's flexible, that's adaptable, that's looking forward and thinking about what that future really looks like. So when we look at, what is business resiliency? Business resiliency, according to ISO 22316 2017 standard, it says that business resiliency is the ability of an organization to absorb and adapt in a changing environment to enable it to deliver its objectives and to survive and prosper. So ultimately, you're looking for that opportunity to prosper. In simple terms, it means taking a blow and recovering from it. For a business, that means that when the disruption occurs, you have the mechanisms in place to absorb the hit without significant impairment. So different from a business continuity plan, business resiliency is really about being in a position to make sure that even when a disaster or a situation occurs, that it's not going to have a significant impairment or impact on your business. In order to have the framework for effective organizational resilience, there's certain principles that need to be adhered to, that need to be thought about and talked about. So what does resilience require? It requires a vision and a purpose that is aligned to the company's behavior. A shared vision, a shared purpose that is not just one of leadership, but is actually shared throughout the organization. Can you go to anyone within your business and they could tell you why your business does what it does, why they're there, and why they want to be a part of that business? It's understanding and having that vision completely inundate your business as a whole. It's understanding your organizational context. Where do we stand today? What's our market share? What other market opportunities are there? Do we need to be looking out for that next great thing that's going to knock us out of the market? And it's the ability of your business. You've got to be able to absorb, adapt, and respond to change. Change is the only constant in the world. And over the years, I've realized that, we really should love change, because change equals opportunity. And if we look at it that way, then we certainly can move our businesses continuously forward, and we can make them resilient against anything that may come against them. Good governance, management, the way you're structured, those are critical to having strong business resilience. Diversity, being able to make sure that you have the diversity of skills, the diversity of leadership ability, diversity of experience, the diversity across your organization and throughout your organization to be able to adapt and to deal with the challenges that may come along. You need to make sure that you have coordination really across all of your management disciplines and contributions coming from the technical world, from the scientific world, from anywhere in your business that can actually add value to your business. And ultimately, you need to have an effective risk management system, a business continuity plan that's looking at those risks, that's understanding what those risks can do to your business and mitigating, taking action to mitigate them. So, the first step is really start coordinating, start communicating, act now. We need to have actions that mandate and ensure that the organization's leadership is committed to enhance organizational resilience. You've got to have adequate resources. If you're strapped by funding, if you're strapped by personnel, then a lot of times that business resiliency just doesn't happen. You may get a business continuity plan in place, but as far as looking forward and adapting, a lot of times that just doesn't happen. You need to make sure that you have the appropriate structures in place to achieve that effective coordination that's necessary throughout the organization to look forward, to constantly be looking forward, to have a continuous improvement process in place, looking to see where you can improve and where you can grow your business. You need to have mechanisms to ensure that investments are occurring in activities that will make your business more resilient, that will better prepare you for the challenges that you face as things change in the world. You need to make sure you have systems that support the effective implementation of that organizational resilience. Systems in place. You need to make sure you have a team together that's working on your business continuity plan. You need to have people that are constantly thinking about throughout your organization how that business continuity plan can be that foundation for moving forward, for growing and moving into the next opportunities that may be available for your business. You need to make sure that you make arrangements to evaluate and enhance your resilience as you move your business forward. You need to be thinking about how can we do this with intentionality? Are we doing this with intentionality, or are we just reacting to what we're seeing? And ultimately, effective communications, that's one of the most critical factors. You've got to make sure you have your communications in place, functioning throughout your organization to meet the needs of that business resiliency, business continuity plan, making sure that your business is situated in a way that whatever challenges that you face. So, in the words of John F. Kennedy, when written in the Chinese world, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, the other represents opportunity. And as we've talked through this business continuity and business resilience seminar or webinar, we've talked about some of the dangers, some of the challenges, some of the things that we need to be planning for. We've also talked about how there's opportunity within those dangers to improve your business long term and really get you in a place where your business will be resilient no matter what the danger that it faces. So I want to thank you all for taking the time. Open it up to questions. I apologize for going a little bit long, but open it up for questions, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Well, first, Sam, great job. I think if anybody, if you saw my introduction to Sam, I said that he's very passionate. Anyone that could do such a great job presenting his session just now in a business center in a hotel with people coming and going, if I had a hat on, I would have to give you a hats off on that. So first of all,
best I could do.
That you did a fantastic job. And I don't know about everybody else, but that statistics you put on from FEMA at the beginning regarding the number of businesses permanently closing following the disaster is shocking. But I think if we really think about it, just looking in each of our communities, we are seeing that, and that's putting it in numbers. We've had several great comments, and that I just wanted to mention here is, again, someone else commented that the business is failing during natural disasters are insurances that businesses can buy that can help prevent them from their loss of income. And I think you might have addressed that after that, but if you want to expand on that, Sam, please feel free.
Well, there certainly are insurances that can help deal with some of the impacts of disasters. But those insurances typically are limited, and it certainly doesn't take into account some of the indirect financial impacts on businesses. The loss of customer base, the loss of that time that you could be doing business that you're not doing business. It may pay for things like inventory. It may pay for things like supplies that you may lose, but more than likely it's not going to actually cover those types of things, especially not in a situation where you have long-term closures like we're dealing with right now with the COVID-19.
Yeah, and my partners, feel free to speak up, but I know that I've talked to a number of insurance agents, and I know the insurance industry is looking at the pandemic and what kind of options in the future they can offer to their clients. And my suggestion to all the business owners watching is just pick up the phone and call your insurance agent and see if their companies have developed anything and what the costs are or what options they're giving to their clients. Partners.
Sorry, I would also add, remember, there's probably still going to be a deductible too. And that deductible may be different depending on the type of disaster that you experience. So that's where, it's not going to kick in until after you put in a certain amount of money, possibly. So just keep that in mind as well.
We've got a question too. This is kind of a loaded question. She said, how does one go about starting their plan for their business? Also separate form that, does one get a continuity plan done on a bit-by-bit basis?
Well, I can, we as the MEP partner for the Commonwealth of Virginia, we do work with manufacturers, and we have worked with a number of them to help them to develop business continuity plans. And generally, that is a fairly long process. We'll go in and we'll have brainstorming sessions with them. We'll let them get their information together and start putting together that actual business continuity plan itself. It is a drawn out process, but it's worth the time. A lot of times what happens is we wind up going in, we'll see that they're going to have to do some homework to get some of that information together, because more than likely it's not already in one place, it's not collected, so they'll have to get that homework together. We'll get back together, and we go through that several times. So it is a kind of a bit by bit process with the businesses we work with.
But they have that template. You've got the link, and at least when you have a starting point, then that blank sheet of paper, and that's what we're trying to help. And if you want to go back and look at our first session, our partners at the Small Business Development Center kind of outlined and what goes into that resiliency plan. Now, another thing that Junior Bay asked about when you were talking about having data and having it backed up or stored where you can get to it when a disaster or crisis happens, he asked, wouldn't a safe deposit box be a good idea to have those key contacts and information safe where any disaster can affect? One thing, though, that I'll mention, Junior, and it happened in my area, is when the governor had that mandatory closure, a lot of banks, even where my safety deposit box is, was closed for in person, and it was closed for several weeks, maybe a month, and then you have to get an appointment to go in and have personnel meet you there. So I don't know that would be a great option just because you couldn't get to it, or if the disaster happened in that whole area, that would infected that bank as well. But partners, feel free to chime in. They're all quiet.
I absolutely agree, Sandy. When the banks are closed, you're not going to get to those safe deposit boxes. I know there's risk associated with having things in other alternate locations that you can easily access. All of that needs to be thought through in your business continuity planning process. And you may come up, as you go through that process, you may come up with some unique ideas that, hey, this is an easy solution for that. I have a storage building, and nobody would ever think to look in that place for this information. Well, I'll put it in the back of it, or it's just, it's hard to know what it is that the solution is going to be, but working through and finding those solutions is the important thing.
I would also jump in that I think it depends on which piece of that as well, because you may have physical assets that are going to be part of your continuity plan that you can't really put on a cloud or something, but contact list, something of that nature, you can put it into a secure cloud-based software so that that's easily accessible. So I think you need to look at what each one is actually showing you, or what each piece of information is for, to determine, can it go into a digital or digitally safe location? That's going to go back to your cybersecurity side of it as well, though, is making sure that you have those things in place and that you can access that, and more than one person can access that.
Yeah, I know my sister, where she works, they actually put a safe in, that's fireproof and so forth. But again, if that's floated away in a flood, what good is it other than a boat anchor? But one other thing, Sam, someone asked, could you expand on the football reference?
Sure. That football reference really is thinking in terms of the nuclear football. The president has always at his right hand that case that has the nuclear codes. And for your business, it may be that important to you to have certain things at your fingertips where you can access it easily, pretty much any time. So that's really what I was getting at related to the football reference. Making sure you have all those critical pieces in a place that you can easily get to them.
L. Rogers just put in chat that it's wise to include some of the continuity plan functions and roles in an employee or manager job descriptions. That's a fantastic idea. Totally agree. And I think you kind of alluded to that at the very beginning of your session, talking about, job shadowing, so that not everybody knows a little bit about each other's positions and where things at, so that you have that in case, God forbid, they should something happened to them and they're out of work, or they were killed, and so that department is not just out with nobody there to share with. So yes, that's very good. And someone also commented about your business immune system is an excellent analogy for having a continuity and a resiliency plan in place. I hope that everyone that watched has a good idea, and now, especially through this COVID, that you are getting better prepared for your business. But if you haven't, I hoped Sam sparked a little get up and go for everybody, and to show you how important it is for you to be prepared than to be in a reactive mode should it happen, because we're all we have a lot on us, and it's hard to remember everything, especially when you're getting hit by various areas. So thank you. I just asked my partners, anything else you want to share or comment on before we close the session?
I was just going to comment and say, in regards to Mandy's last comment, that, most businesses usually have an attorney that's been associated with their business. And so I think that's always an option, is to have a list of where things might be. And if you don't want to give it to one individual, then you could leave it with an attorney for safekeeping in the event that, someone would need to find things. Great suggestion.
Very good.
I just want to let everyone know that we'll share the Sam slides that you can keep as a resource, and also we will upload this video was recorded, and I will share the link with you all either later this afternoon or tomorrow. Hope that you will make plans to join us next Thursday as we focus on crisis management and developing your team and processes, kind of moving forward or expanding on some of the things that Sam alluded to in his presentation. So I hope that you will join us, and Gen Edge will also be presenting that session. Please share information about this session with others, either in your company or other business that you know that could it could help them going forward. I think that's the whole reason we're doing this, is being able to share resources and ideas and help you better prepare. So again, I want to thank Sam. Again, props. If you were with me, I would give you a big old chocolate candy. That's how I like my rewards. Becky can tell you about that. But thank you again for your expertise, Sam, for actually you're pinch hitting for someone else at Gen Edge. So again, great job. and your passion shines throughout your presentation, what you did today. But thanks everybody for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedules, and I hope that you will join us next week and throughout the following weeks through October the 29th. And again, please share. So hope everybody has a great rest of your week, and I hope to see you next Thursday. Thank you.